Young Turks on a fun Monday evening. Cenk, Uygur, Ann Kasparian with you guys, but we're not alone. You're not alone. In the second hour, a killer will join the show. And I don't mean Ted Cruz, the Zodiac killer. No, I mean Killer Mike. So he's gonna be on the panel in the second hour. And I don't know how many people he's gonna kill in here, but it's gonna be interesting to find out.
He's not gonna kill anybody, okay?
It's in the title, Killer Mike. It'd be kind of disappointing if he doesn't. Anyway.
Who do you want him to kill?
I'm kidding around, obviously.
Hopefully some of the
I want him to
flies.
kill some rhymes. You know what I'm saying?
He does kill some rhymes.
Okay. Anyway, he's got a new Netflix show, but he's gonna actually cover the news with us in the second hour. And then tonight, for the members, Kamala Harris's town hall. We will be covering that, doing play-by-play coverage. You do not want to miss that. tyt.com/join to become a member. Get all the privileges of membership. But you know what? You could also do it for free for the first week. It's a 1-week trial if you go to tyt.com/trial. Now would be a good time to do it. State of the Union was canceled for tomorrow, so we will not be covering that because it does not exist. It will be rescheduled for another time, and that is when we'll do play-by-play. That'll be for everybody, okay, not just for members. And then last thing I want to mention to you guys right before we get going here on Trump and the madness is, although there's a great story in today's show about what Wall Street thinks of Democratic candidates.
Oh, I love it. It's so good.
Oh, I love that story. Okay, so on Sunday, there is some sort of game that is being played that copyright restrictions don't allow me to say the name of. Okay, but we will be watching it here. And so some of you know that's a Young Turks tradition, okay? So you could put us on the second screen. Of course, we're not allowed to show that game, but you could watch our reaction and commentary on the game. So that interesting game on Sunday, right here on tyt.com/live. Obviously, you gotta watch the game on wherever you normally watch it, and then our commentary on the side, okay? So check that out. All right, Anna, what's up?
All right. Following a 35-day partial government shutdown, Donald Trump finally agreed to reopen the government and do so for about 3 weeks. Now, there is some question as to what will happen after these 3 weeks are up, and he shared his thoughts on this during a recent interview with the Wall Street Journal. According to the reporting, Trump assessed the chances of whether a newly formed group of 17 lawmakers could craft a deal before the next government funding lapse in less than 3 weeks, and he said, "I personally think it's less than 50-50, but you have a lot of very good people on that board." Okay. I mean, typical Trump fashion, he's very vague, but throughout this interview, he does make it clear that he thinks it's unlikely that there will be an agreement that leads to him getting the funding he wants for his wall. Asked if he would accept less than $5.7 billion in the next round of negotiations, Trump said, quote, "I doubt it," adding, "I have to do it right."
Okay, so I want to give you a caveat about what Trump is saying and then talk about what's actually going to happen. The caveat is none of it means anything. It's just words coming out of his mouth, and then the next sentence, other words come out that contradict what he's saying, and on we go. So don't pay too much attention to any one thing that he says on any given day. So for example, you probably have this quote later, Anna, but I'm gonna jump ahead here. When asked about whether it has to be a wall, right, a physical wall, he said, "I have to see what it is. As long as it can stop criminals, gangs, human trafficking, and drugs, I'm open to anything. But the only thing that will work is a very strong form of physical barrier. So I'm open to anything, but it must be a physical barrier." No, that means you're not open to anything, but apparently you don't understand words in the English language. Anyway, it doesn't really matter because he is open to it, he's not open to it. He'll change his mind 18 times before there's an actual conclusion. So that's important for you guys to know. If you're new to American politics and you think, oh, well, the American president said something, it must mean something. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, in any normal case, it doesn't really mean much because there's usually backpedaling and our leaders reneging on promises that they had made. But with Trump, he goes even further in going back and forth. Depending on his mood that day, depending on who bullied him on cable news, that's how he makes his decisions. Now, he was very serious about how he is unwilling to negotiate after these 3 weeks are up. In fact, when he announced that the government will reopen, he alluded to the fact that he is open to yet another government shutdown. Take a look.
We really have no choice but to build a powerful wall or steel barrier. If we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and the Constitution of the United States to address this emergency.
So there could either be another government shutdown, which seems likely at the moment, or he could call for a national emergency, which he threatened to do previously. And Mick Mulvaney, of course, is going around doing his media tour and just regurgitating what Trump has asked him to regurgitate. I want to just go to that clip very quickly and we'll talk about it.
Is the president really prepared to shut down the government again in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think he actually is. Keep in mind, he's willing to do whatever it takes to secure the border. He does take this very seriously. This is a serious humanitarian and security crisis. And as president of the United States, he takes the security of the nation as his highest priority.
He takes it so seriously that he'll have a partial government shutdown, which makes the country less safe.
Where TSA agents can't show up and keep airports safe, National Guard is unpaid, et cetera. So how's this gonna get resolved? Lucky for you, I have the answer. Now, let's note first that I lack credibility on this issue, having just lost a bet to the woman sitting next to me on how things would proceed a little bit earlier. And I thought the Democrats would cave in earlier, and they did not. So that's your context. We like to be fair. Now, I think I have a better sense of it this time around, and you guys will get to find out along with us. So what do I base my judgment on? Okay, first of all, the conclusion is I don't think we're gonna have another government shutdown. The Republicans hated it. It killed their poll ratings. They don't want it under any circumstances. Democrats never really want a shutdown. They're always worried about a shutdown. They're worried about a market downturn for their donors. They're worried about the unions. They represent a lot of the unions, or a lot of the unions give money to them. That's another way of putting it. And they actually care a little bit more than the Republicans do about the government workers. So, but we do have these shutdowns every once in a while because usually the Republicans demand unusual things. In this case, to be fair to the Republicans in Congress, they didn't until Trump made them. And then they went along with Trump because they had a previous deal with the Democrats. Okay, so why do I think that there won't be one? Because as the Wall Street Journal accurately explains, House Democrats had been preparing a proposal just last week outlining more than $5 billion in border security enhancements that they supported. So, well, that's about the $5.7 billion that Trump wanted.
Right.
So then
giant caveat. There is a giant caveat to that. So it's not $5 billion for a border wall. It's $5 billion for increased border security, which means an increase in the number of border patrol agents, an advancement in the technology used at the border, including more drones, that kind of stuff. But it's not a physical barrier, which again, you can't really take anything Trump says seriously. But he claims that if he doesn't get a physical barrier, he will not sign on to the deal.
Well, whether there's any steel barriers is an open question because you classify it as fixing fences or putting up additional fences. Is it a fence? Is it a wall? It's a steel slat. What is that? So there's plenty of wiggle room there for politicians to come in and go, yeah, that's a wall. And for other politicians to go, of course it's not a wall. But anyway, we got a deal, let's move on, right? And we could argue back and forth all day long about whether it's a wall or not. And Trump does have the ability to do the national emergency, which would be preposterous and it would be a great abuse of power, but he's never cared about any of that. So even if he thinks that, well, it's not really quite a physical barrier, whatever, I'm just gonna move on and I'm gonna do the national emergency. So there's a lot of reasons why they won't go to a second shutdown. It would be, I mean, Trump would have to snatch even larger defeat out of the jaws of already defeat to force a second government shutdown, which he couldn't possibly win on that either. Besides which, if the Democrats give him around $5 billion for something around the border, it's easy for Trump to declare victory. He can say, I wanted $5 billion, they gave me $5 billion, I told you, right?
Right, I know.
It wouldn't be exactly accurate, but it'd be good enough that it's face saving and they could all move on.
Well, it's interesting because Trump is, even though he lost on the issue, he didn't get the funding for his border wall, he's already declaring victory, which is amazing, right? He's going after anyone in the media who is reporting the story accurately by mentioning that he lost on this issue. So either way, no matter what happens, Trump is always going to pretend like he's the winner and he's gonna say so. But I don't know, I'm curious to see how this plays out. I think that it would be a little weak of the Democrats to try to rebrand this in a way that would appeal to Trump, but he seems to be swayed by the hard right, and the hard right wants that border wall. They want a physical barrier, and if he's gonna sign on to enhanced border security that doesn't include a physical barrier, additional physical barrier, then I don't know. I have no idea how he's gonna vote on that.
Yeah, again, it's just, then it gets into definitions, but Hakeem Jeffries now in leadership for the Democrats in the House basically intimated that, look, we can get a deal now. It was hard to do a deal when there was a shutdown because then it looks like we're doing hostage negotiations. And we're not in hostage negotiations now. So now this is my interpretation. So we will now revert back to being Democrats and give Republicans most of what they want.
Actually, now that you mention hostages, there's one other final point to the story that I want to make sure you know about. In future negotiations about funding the government, Trump has made it clear that he is not going to consider the Dreamers. So previously, he felt that, hey, maybe if I negotiate and offer some protections for the Dreamers in the form of 3 years of workers' visas, maybe Democrats will give me what I want. Democrats did not agree to that. And so moving forward, Trump has decided to take Dreamers out of the equation. Let's go to graphic 4. When it came to the Dreamers, he said, I doubt it. When asked if he would agree to citizenship for them in exchange for border wall funding, and then he says that's a separate subject to be taken up at a separate time.
So ignore everything he says. Okay, so could it be part of the deal? Of course, he made the offer as part of the deal just last week. He said, yeah, temporary protection for the Dreamers. So, well, like permanent protection is somehow magically out of the equation? No, it's not. It depends, right? And so now back to the Democrats for one last second. This is the term that they might use to split the baby. Enhanced fencing. That's what Hakeem Jeffries referred to. And so the Democrats could say, see, it's fencing. And Trump can say, see, it's a wall. It's enhanced fencing and hence a physical barrier. And we're all politicians and we all move along with our lives is the conclusion they will likely reach. Joe Manchin, of course, said he was open to a barrier along the border. He's a so-called Democrat from West Virginia, but to be fair to Manchin, he did say that he thinks immigration reform should be part of it. So maybe you know what? I'll hold out hope for one last thing, which is that without Trump in the process, that Republicans and Democrats might actually agree to an approach that might make sense. Some physical barrier along with a broader package of border security accompanied by real reform for Dreamers. That would actually be a proposal that would be fairly popular in the country. The left doesn't like any of that wall talk, but man, we want to protect Dreamers.
Right, yeah,
right?
But it can't be some temporary BS protection, which is what they tried to do previously with the 3 years of workers' visas. By the way, just to buttress your point about how Democrats are already kind of trying to cave to the situation a little bit, they also referred to their proposal as a smart wall, even though it's not a physical wall. It would just be a wall of additional technology.
Okay, you know what? Super duper last thing.
Why can't you guys just win? Just win and go with it. I mean, doesn't it feel good?
I know. They can't help themselves. Anyway, but look, I just want to move on. I don't want another government shutdown. It's not gonna be a real wall. It doesn't matter. Whereas protection for the Dreamers would be real. That's why I'd be willing to make that trade. Anyway, call it whatever you like. Call it the invisible wall, Wonder Woman's wall, the stealth wall. Let's move on. Let's move on. Enhanced fencing. What a preposterous, euphemism. I'll take it. Okay, just let's go. Let's move on with our lives.
How progressive of you to propose a Wonder Woman wall, which, Republicans would totally sign on to that.
Right, only because it's invisible like her jet.
All right, well, let's move on to another part of this story that I love. Following Donald Trump's decision to reopen the government without the $5.7 billion he demanded for his border wall, a number of right-wing figures like Ann Coulter go on social media, call him a wimp, start criticizing him pretty aggressively. And Trump was asked about that during a recent interview with the Wall Street Journal. And in reference to Ann Coulter, he said, quote, "I hear Coulter has become very hostile. Maybe I didn't return her call or something."
Damn, drums.
He also went after some Fox News reporters, which we'll get to in just a second. But Fox and Friends decided to comment on what Trump had to say about Ann Coulter. And here's the discussion.
The president sat down with Wall Street Journal yesterday, and in the wake of the fact that he reopened the federal government to get things going and get people paid, he was asked about Ann Coulter, who said that after he reopened the government, he was a wimp, the president was, and the president is quoted by the Wall Street Journal as saying of Ann Coulter, "I hear she's become very hostile. Maybe I didn't return her phone call or something."
Right, I think the president cares way too much about people in the media. He's president, he's not a candidate. He's got to make some tough decisions, and he's not an absolute monarch. There are times when you have leverage, there are times you don't. And this was a time in which he did not have maximum leverage. He did after 35 days, he has basically 3 weeks to get what he wants, and let's see what happens.
So he's not gonna have maximum leverage moving forward either. Like, I like that, that's Kilmeade, right?
Yep.
I like that Kilmeade is trying to make excuses for him and cover for him. But the very first part of his statement, I think, is the most relevant, where he's like, Trump cares too much about the media. Yeah, he cares way too much about the media. You guys have loved that so far. I mean, they've all, essentially shilled for him on their shows with the hopes that maybe they'll be nominated as a Supreme Court justice. But no, I mean, all of a sudden Trump cares too much about the media and you want to critique him for it? Yeah, I agree, but it's just funny that it's happening in this context.
Yeah, that was funny and weird. Brian Kilmeade as the voice of reason. He did an eye roll on Ann Coulter, which I enjoyed.
Me too. I love a good eye roll.
That's right. And then he went on to say, look, man, sometimes you just don't have leverage. And so that's that, and you gotta move on with your life. And that's true. Now, the part that was left unsaid, which is very important, is, well, he had 2 years to build this wall when he had plenty of leverage, and he chose not to. Instead, he chose to do giant tax cuts for the rich because that was his real priority. So Fox News is gonna tell you that, right? They're gonna tell you, oh my God, Democrats won't. You didn't know there was gonna be elections in 2 years? You didn't know that you might lose those elections? People knew that the Democrats were gonna win back the House for a long time, but Trump sat on his hands, All he cared was the tax cuts for corporations and for his donors and for the rich.
Himself.
And for himself, that's right. And that he got past, no problem, okay? But when it came to the wall, oops, dude, where's my wall? He realized just as the Democrats were taking over. No, he didn't prioritize because he doesn't really care. It was an empty promise.
Exactly. Now, Trump hates the fact that the media, including right-wing media, is reporting on what happened with the government shutdown accurately. Trump didn't get the funding for his border wall. He ended up caving because he did not have leverage. His poll numbers were going down pretty drastically. And so he opens the government up without getting what he wants. He hates anyone who says that, including members of Fox News. I'm not even talking about people who do commentary on Fox News. I'm talking about their reporters who are just simply reporting what happened. So he lashes out on them on Twitter saying, quote, "Never thought I'd say this, but I think John Roberts and Jillian Turner, Fox News, have even less understanding of the wall negotiations than the folks at fake news, CNN and NBC. Look to final results, don't know how my poll numbers are so good, especially up 19% with Hispanics." Okay, so let me just break down the numbers for you before we get to, comments about what he has to say about the media. So Trump appeared to be referencing an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll from earlier this month that found 50% of Latino adults approved of Trump's job as president. But there is a caveat. The poll's director later noted in a PBS NewsHour fact check that an earlier reference by Trump to the 19% increase takes the data out of context, noting that the survey included responses from 153 Latino Americans, resulting in a pretty giant margin of error, 9.9 percentage points for that subgroup in the poll. This is why I don't like polls.
Well, no, it depends. Okay, so anyway, look, just one quick thing on the poll, and then we'll get back to the main story about Fox News versus Donald Trump. So when I saw him quoting that poll number, I thought, oh, he probably made it up because he has made up more polls than real ones that he has cited. He just makes up polls like, hey, I'm more popular than Abraham Lincoln. Not a thing. There were no polls in Abraham Lincoln's time, not remotely true. In this case, I was shocked to find out that the poll is actually real. Yes, this sample size was too small for Latinos and hence the huge margin of error. and most polls have him at a much lower number for support among Latinos. In fact, another poll has him at only 31% approval. But he was not lying in that case. That's breaking news.
Yeah.
Okay, so but overall, that even the poll that was favorable to him has his overall favorability at 39%, which is miserable. Notice he did not quote that in the tweet.
Right. Now, after he attacked members of Fox News, people were outraged about it. I mean, he's been attacking the media before he was elected into office, and I didn't hear any crying or whining from Fox. Maybe there were a few critiques here and there, but for the most part, they've remained silent because Trump has been very complimentary toward Fox. But after he attacked Fox, Julie Banderas, who works over at Fox News, said the following: "This is not right. I stand by my colleagues. They don't deserve this. No reporter does. They are doing their jobs and reporting the facts. They are not opinion journalists and deserve the respect from the White House they cover." And then she also followed that tweet by saying, by going on Twitter and insulting 2 of our journalists, Donald Trump is putting a target on their backs. In turn, his followers will then attack John Roberts and Jillian Turner in support on Twitter. Bullying journalists is not presidential, period. Well, I agree with you, but where were you when Trump was referring to journalists at CNN as enemy of the people, when he was inciting violence toward them time and time again? I mean, it's just interesting how there was no backlash toward Trump from Fox News when he was doing that on a regular basis.
Yeah, did you guys think that he was going to exempt you if you ever tweaked him? No, of course, if anyone. And what does it mean to tweak him? Did John Roberts, et cetera, criticize him? No, they just laid out the actual facts. And so I guess credit to them for getting that past the editors at Fox News. But overall, all they did was state facts. And Trump, of course, had his very, very thin skin, ruffled by that. And so he's like, oh, how dare they say I lost when in fact I won. And we have the wall? Well, that didn't happen. So of course, John Roberts and Jillian Turner were right. But I'm with you. I mean, Banderas says she was always for the other reporters, but did she go out and publicly claim it on Twitter earlier? No, all of a sudden when it hits her interests, all of a sudden, what are you doing bullying journalists? He's been bullying journalists for 4 years straight now.
Yes.
And you just noticed that? And look, I don't know what Banderas's political leanings are. I know where she works, and so she doesn't mind doing Republican propaganda. There is no such thing as just straight journalism on Fox News. They get memos from the vice presidents of news, et cetera. This has all been uncovered, telling them to slant the news. And in the old days, they would tell them to call Obama Marxist, socialist, et cetera, right? So anyway, what conservatives normally do is, yeah, it's your problem, I don't care, whatever. But the minute it hits them, they're like, what? This is an outrage. Well, I didn't know he was bullying journalists. Now that I'm being bullied, or my colleagues and people I care about are being bullied, well, it turns out this is unacceptable. You don't say.
And I do want to know, look, there were very rare exceptions to that. And it was when Acosta was banned from the White House because he had the audacity to ask a question that they didn't like. Fox News, to their credit, did come out with a statement in support of getting those credentials back to him. But other than that, I can't really think of specific examples where members of Fox News stood up for the press in general. And there's this very toxic environment that's been fostered by Donald Trump toward the media. And yes, the media makes its mistakes. There are definitely serious flaws that we talk about on this show all the time. But we also understand that they're not the enemy of the people. We also understand that they're important. And in order for a democracy to function properly, you need quality journalism. Trump doesn't believe in that. He wants journalism that acts as propaganda for whatever it is he wants to do.
And let me make a final distinction here. His attack against John Roberts and Turner were actually not that bad, because he basically said that he doesn't agree with them. He didn't say they're the enemy of the people and you should do something about it, which he said about CNN, NBC, et cetera. So it's actually a fairly mild critique given the context of Donald Trump. And it's okay, you're allowed to disagree with reporters. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is when you call them enemy of the people and incite hatred, fear, and violence towards them. And yes, from time to time, and I think even Kilmeade might have done it, so that's my second time giving him credit in this segment, saying, hey, that language is not that helpful. But the exception proves the rule. They did it so sparingly, Fox News. You had 4 years to say, no, Mr. President, we know you watch this channel. You cannot call them enemy of the people. That is dangerous. And they did not make that stand. Let's be clear about that. So now when all of a sudden it affects them, then I'm a little less concerned about their tears.
Let's take a break. When we come back, Tom Brokaw shares some of his tears with us and apologizes for saying some pretty hideous things on Meet the Press.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. Hey, oh, look at this. Welcome to the Young Turks, little side view action. All right, Cenk Uygur, it almost makes me want to give somebody a Christian side hug. You know, I was talking to Mark Thompson about this. I don't think we talked about it on Old School, but we should. The funny thing is, so we did this video about Christian side hugs a million years ago. And we made fun, but it turns out it's kind of coming back. It's not Christian side hugs, but a lot of people are now starting to do side hugs.
Out of fear.
Out of like, concern that, you don't want to get too intimate with folks at work, etc. So all of a sudden, maybe the Christians were onto something a long time ago.
We all need to calm down.
Okay.
Like either give someone a full hug or don't hug them at all. Like don't be awkward. That is like such an awkward thing to do.
Side hug. Okay, all right.
I want that.
Anyways, Sobek is a member and writes in, some people claim it's a double standard to say it's okay for Bernie Sanders to run, but not for Hillary Rodham Clinton. Thing is, Sanders didn't lose to Trump, and he won key states. Hillary Clinton lost to Trump. Nuance in politics. So, look, we're going to talk about the 2020 candidates and what Wall Street thinks of them in a second. I think you're going to love that story. So is there hypocrisy on that issue? Massive, massive hypocrisy. And I'm going to knock down one of the conventional wisdoms. Look, in the old days, those conventional wisdoms, they hung around forever. But I think in the new days, we're going to knock them down quicker. But let's hope I'm right. Anyways, let me go to Twitter because there's two great comments. Stephen M says, I almost skipped TYT today because it's been such a bad day. Then I realized slipping TYT would only make it worse.
It would, you're right.
I think he meant skipping, sorry. I don't know what slipping TYT would do, but okay. Jeff Waldorf writes in, can't wait to do a quote, an enhanced exit of corporate Democrats from Congress.
For real.
Referring to the enhanced fence. All right, lots to get to. Killer Mike's coming up in a little bit. Let's get going.
All right. On Meet the Press, Tom Brokaw shared some of his thoughts regarding the division in the country in regard to immigration, particularly immigration from Mexico and Central American countries. I don't want to put words in his mouth, so why don't we just take a listen to what he had to say.
On the Republican side, a lot of people see the rise of an extraordinary important new constituency in American politics, Hispanics, who will come here and all be Democrats. Also, I hear when I push people a little harder, I don't know whether I want brown grandbabies. I mean, that's also a part of it. It's the intermarriage that is going on and the cultures that are conflicting with each other. I also happen to believe that the Hispanics should work harder at assimilation. That's one of the things I've been saying for a long time. That they ought not to be just codified in their communities, but make sure that all of their kids are learning to speak English and that they feel comfortable in the communities. And that's going to take outreach on both sides, frankly.
So the backlash was swift. And we're going to give you his apology in just a second. But I love like we don't want your brown grandbabies, but you should assimilate. You should assimilate, right? First of all, and the assumption that Hispanics are automatically, no matter what, gonna vote for Democrats. Yeah, because you guys are pretty hideous to them. And think about this, many Hispanics are actually deeply religious. And if you care to be welcoming toward them, maybe they would be more likely to assimilate, but more importantly, they would be more likely to vote for Republicans. And Hispanics, it's not a monolithic group. They've just made their assumptions, they've latched onto stereotypes, and that's it. They don't want to move forward.
So I want to build on what Ann is saying. There's two principal problems with what Tom Brokaw just said. First, I want to be clear. He's saying it's bad that some Republicans are saying, I don't want brown babies. So let's be fair about what he's saying. I just didn't want you to misunderstand it. But he also said, as if it was a legitimate reason, they're concerned that they're gonna vote for Democrats. So that's their, as opposed to the illegitimate not wanting brown babies, the legitimate reason is they don't want more Democratic voters. But as Anna pointed out, or Or you could try to actually get them to be your voters by, I don't know, representing them. Not doing special favors or privileges for them, but treating them like every other citizen and saying, we care about you, and like everyone else, we'd like to look out for you.
Or just don't slander them.
Or don't call them criminals and rapists.
Right.
I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, just spitballing.
Step number one.
Right?
Yeah.
But Brokaw and and I think he's representative of the old school of mainstream media, thinks, no, that's legitimate to discriminate against them and to demagogue against them for political reasons is okay, as opposed to racial reasons is not okay. No, but they're both racial, and neither one is okay. One is just more brazen than the other, okay? But saying like, well, I mean, I discriminate against Latinos, but that's because I think they're gonna vote Democrat, doesn't make it much better.
No, it makes it worse, and it shows you that you don't actually genuinely believe in democracy, because rather than listen to voters or listen to constituents and do whatever it takes to represent them so they support you and vote for you, you try to control the electorate and craft it to your advantage. That's what Republicans have been doing through all of these, laws that they've been passing in various states, which makes it increasingly difficult for people who usually vote Democrat, to vote at all.
Yeah, and so now let's go to the second part. So he did not, by the way, that first part he did not apologize for. He only apologized about the second part where he said they should try to assimilate more. And obviously for clear reasons that rub people the wrong way, and that's not the right thing to say. So he profusely apologized. We'll get to that in a sec. But notice the overlying theme though, which is both sides do it, right? Hey, on the one hand, Republicans are racist for legitimate and illegitimate reasons. But on the other hand, it's also Latinos' fault, maybe equally so. And remember, he said, I've been saying this for a long time. He apparently only said it on TV now and had got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Apparently, he's been telling people left and right and did not get caught earlier about how he thinks, well, there's good people on both sides, there's bad people on both sides. The Republicans are racist against Latinos, but Latinos won't bend to their will and speak English immediately and do everything the Republicans want, so I'll call it even, which is the essence of Tom Brokaw's career. So I know that in Washington and New York, you mention Tom Brokaw and they will trip over themselves bowing down. Like, oh my God, the legend, Tom Brokaw, the legend, right? I don't care, I don't agree. I think that Tom Brokaw was not especially bad, he was just as bad as everyone else. And the constant, I can't tell who's telling the truth. Republicans say this, Democrats say that. I'll call it 50-50, thereby aid and abet lies. So, and what's even worse is apparently he's internalized some of that. All right, now that he got caught, let's go to his apologies.
So again, backlash was swift, and he goes on Twitter. This is from a series of tweets, but we consolidated them to give you his full apology. He says, I am sorry, truly sorry, my comments were offensive to many. The great enduring American tradition of diversity is to be celebrated and cherished. I am sorry, I never intended to disparage any segment of our rich, diverse society, which defines who we are. Finally, I am sorry I failed to convey my strong belief that diversity, dynamic and inclusive, is what makes America.
Okay, so look, he apologized like 78 times, I get it. He realized it threatened his career, and so, the part that sticks with me is I've been saying this a long time.
Right, but okay, so just going back to the playing both sides game that we see in the media oftentimes. Look, on the outside, on a very shallow level, it might appear that they're playing both sides or using each side as equal in any given political argument. But in reality, and you can tell by his tone, you can tell by the way he phrased that entire statement, that he falls in the more right-wing category on this issue. And so you think that didn't come out in his fair reporting? The leaning toward the right, favoring the right's argument. It might appear that he's trying to be fair, but in reality, that bias exists, and that bias does show in the reporting.
And almost every one of his generation of reporters, all the way up to now, says things that are patently false, like this is a center-right country. It's not. Read a poll, any poll, every poll. On almost every issue, it's a massively center-left country. But Brokaw and his ilk, in effect, I don't think they intended to, but in effect lied to the country over and over again, saying, no, you're right wing, you're right wing, you're right wing. And their assumptions, not because they were bad people, but because they believed in that groupthink, their assumptions were center right was correct and everything else is incorrect and radical and fringe and impractical. And that has done great harm to the country. So we just found out a sliver of what Tom Brokaw really thinks. And it's not to say that I don't accept his apology. I don't really care about Tom Brokaw as a person, right? I don't dislike him. He's not my uncle. I don't care, right? So, okay, I accept his apology for whatever it's worth. It's not my place to accept it or reject it, but that's not the important part. The important part is, how does the media cover these topics? And when you equate racism with the opposite, that is not a good way to cover it. And unfortunately, that's been the case in media for a long, long time. And again, super last thing, hearkening back to the horse race politics way of covering it. Well, the Republicans say that they're discriminating against Latinos because they don't want more Democrats voting. And the assumption is that is a legitimate way of doing politics, and I put no value judgment on it.
Which is crazy.
And the Brokaws of the world, and to this day, I would argue that a lot of the mainstream media thinks, hey, it's not my place to judge. Well, it's at least your place to tell us, yes, they are doing a racist strategy, but hey, I guess that's their business. But if you pretty it up and you say, oh, it's just politics, it's just discriminating against a whole group of people, it's just politics, hey, they're just being smart or clever, well, then you've done a disservice to the reality on the ground. You've helped them cover up the terrible things they've been doing for all this time.
When we come back from the break, we will discuss how both Democrats and Republicans have been secretly hobnobbing with the rich and the elite while we weren't paying attention. And also, what does Wall Street think about the Democratic candidates, including Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders?
Oh, man, the thing about Bernie Sanders is a great mystery. We'll see if we can solve it together. But their thoughts on other stuff is very interesting. Okay, some surprises and some clear indications you're not going to be surprised by. Fun story overall. We'll be right back.